Welcome to This Explainer. So, tonight, when the sun goes down, you're probably going to do something totally ordinary. You'll reach out, flip a switch, and just like that, light floods your room. You won't even think twice about it. But for a staggering 99.9% of human history, that switch simply didn't exist. Today, we're exploring the lost history of the night, and I'm going to show you that basically everything we think we know about a normal night's sleep is actually a modern illusion.
Okay, let's dive into this. Consider this stark comparison to set the stage for our journey. On one side, we have the modern night, the completely effortless act of flipping a switch to instantly flood our environment with artificial light. But on the other side, the ancient night. For over 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors spent roughly half of their lives in near total darkness. I mean, they didn't even have candles for most of that time. It was just the black sky, the stars, and whatever fire they could manage to keep alive. The contrast between our modern convenience and the terrifying pitch-black reality our ancestors endured is frankly immense.
Moving into Section 1, the Age of Darkness and the Campfire Revolution. Because before human beings learned to control fire, when the sun went down, we were completely at the mercy of the night.
And that brings us to a very specific and honestly a highly terrifying number, 30 feet. You see, before humans learned to control fire, we were basically like every other primate out there. When the sun went down, you climbed a tree and stayed totally still to avoid predators like leopards and hyenas, whose eyes worked perfectly under the starlight. But fire changed everything. This number, 30 feet, represents the exact diameter of safety that a typical campfire provided. Inside that glowing circle, you were safe. Predators wouldn't come near. But stepping outside that razor-thin margin into the pitch black, that literally meant risking your life. In fact, anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups have documented that people who wander away from the fire at night are still significantly more likely to be killed by predators. The campfire was, quite literally, a circle of life.
Now, what's really fascinating about this shift in safety is how it completely rewired human interaction. Take a look at this. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Weisner published a brilliant study on the Kalahari Bushmen, who live very close to our original human lifestyle. She found that during the day, about 80% of their conversations were purely practical: work, hunting logistics, economic negotiations, that sort of thing. But at night, thanks to the 2 to 4 extra hours of usable time the fire gave them, the script completely flipped. A massive 81% of campfire conversations shifted away from the practical and turned into storytelling. They talked about distant places, grand adventures, and the origins of the world.
The cultural impact of this was just monumental. Because of those extra illuminated hours, the fire-lit environment became our original theater, the original classroom, and the original church. This is literally where human culture was born. Sitting around those flames, we learned to shift our minds away from basic daytime survival, and we started to imagine things far beyond our immediate present. It was around the fire that we learned to be human.
But those campfire stories are really only half of the night's lost history. Let's transition to Section 2, The Secret of Two Sleeps, and the ancient rhythm discovered by historian Roger Eckertsch.
Eckertsch actually spent 16 long years digging through over 500 historical references, stuff like diaries, court records, medical texts, even passages from Homer's Odyssey. Based on his work, let's walk through this timeline of the ancient night, because it proves beyond a doubt that you were not designed to sleep the way you sleep right now. Before the industrial age, people absolutely did not sleep in one continuous 8-hour block. Instead, they'd go to bed shortly after sunset for what they called a first sleep, which lasted about 4 hours. Then, they woke up. For 1 to 2 hours right in the middle of the night, they were wide awake in a period famously known as the watch. After that period of wakefulness, they'd go back to sleep for another 4 hours until dawn, the second sleep. This segmented 2-part sleep wasn't an anomaly. It was the completely normal human pattern for thousands of years.
And people didn't just lie there staring at the ceiling, frustrated during the watch. They were actually highly active in the dark. To ground the science in history, listen to this incredible quote from a 16th century French physician. He advised, couples should conceive children during this window because they will do it better. Talk about a different perspective, right? Beyond that, people used this wakeful period to visit neighbors, write, interpret their dreams while they were still fresh, or just lie in the quiet dark to think and reflect. It was a thriving, active part of the human day.
Now you might be wondering, if this was so incredibly common, why on earth don't we know about it? Well, it turns out translators literally mistranslated ancient Greek and medieval Latin texts just to fit the modern 8-hour sleep assumption. Modern historians, reading the words first sleep, simply couldn't comprehend what it meant. They were so utterly blinded by our modern norm of continuous sleep that they just assumed it meant something else. And in doing so, they basically erased a massive part of daily human life from the history books.
And this brilliantly illustrates that our biology actually hasn't forgotten this pattern at all. Consider psychiatrist Thomas Ware's 1992 experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health. He took volunteers and plunged them into 14 hours of total darkness every single night, stripping away all artificial light to mimic our ancient environment. Compare that to our modern standard of getting just 7 to 8 hours of sleep, completely surrounded by artificial light after sunset. The results? Within weeks, the volunteers in the dark naturally and automatically reverted exactly to the ancient two-sleep pattern. Nobody told them to do it. Their ancient programming just took over.
The biological data from Weir's experiment is absolutely stunning. The physical state of the body during the watch was entirely unique. When Weir measured their hormones during this middle-of-the-night wakeful period, he found elevated levels of prolactin. Now, that is the exact same hormone released during deep meditation. Participants described feeling deeply peaceful and reflective. This proved it was entirely distinct from normal waking consciousness. This wasn't just some ancient version of insomnia. It was a unique, highly beneficial meditative state that we modern humans have almost entirely lost.
So how exactly did we lose something so deeply ingrained in our biology? That brings us to Section 3, the death of night and the conquering of darkness.
A quick look at history reveals the rapid technological conquest of the night. It really started in the 1600s, when cities like Paris and London began installing street lamps to reduce crime. The night was slowly becoming navigable. Then, the 1800s brought widespread gas lamps to the streets. And finally, the ultimate game changer. In 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the electric light bulb. In the blink of an evolutionary eye, the night transformed from a fearful, supernatural time into a brightly lit, easily manageable extension of the daytime.
To demonstrate just how drastically our relationship with the dark changed, I want to inject a really surprising historical fact here. Look at the definition of the word curfew. It actually comes from the French couvre-feu, which literally translates to cover fire. Back in medieval towns, a bell would ring signaling everyone to extinguish their fires. And this wasn't just about preventing accidents. Towns strictly enforced total darkness because night was inherently meant to be a time of vulnerability and sleep. In fact, walking outside after dark without a lantern was illegal in many European cities. The night strictly belonged to the dark, right up until we conquered it.
Now, let's bring this fascinating historical data directly to your own biology in Section 4, your ancient biological clock.
Understanding this history is absolutely crucial if you want to understand your own modern sleep struggles, because the main point is this: your body simply doesn't know the difference between a light bulb and the sun. Think about it. Today we expose ourselves to artificial light for an average of 7 to 8 hours after sunset. When that artificial blue light from your phone or your TV hits your retina at 11 p.m., your brain genuinely interprets it as daytime. It suppresses your production of melatonin, fragments your sleep, and entirely disrupts a circadian rhythm that literally took millions of years to evolve.
But hey, the good news is your ancient programming isn't totally gone. I want to highlight this number right here, 2 hours. Researchers have found that if you take people camping for just 1 week with absolute zero artificial light, their body's melatonin cycle will naturally reset by nearly 2 full hours. Their bodies literally start producing melatonin right at sunset again instead of hours later. Just 1 week of real, natural darkness is all it takes to prove that our 300,000 years of biological programming is still right there inside us, just waiting for the lights to go out.
This leaves us with a profound and honestly a somewhat tragic realization. We didn't just change when we sleep, we eliminated an entire phase of human consciousness. We traded that quiet, peaceful, meditative state between first and second sleep for the simple, everyday convenience of a light switch. And because we've collectively forgotten our history, when we wake up in the middle of the night today, we panic. We call it insomnia, we treat it as a medical disorder, and we completely misdiagnose what is actually a totally natural, hardwired human state.
Which brings us to a huge, paradigm-shifting question I want to leave you with as we wrap up this explainer. What if your 2 a.m. insomnia is just your body remembering? Just think about that tonight. What if waking up and lying there in the dark isn't your body malfunctioning at all, but rather your ancient biology reaching out for the very rhythm that built human civilization? Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope this completely changes how you view your next sleepless night. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.